You know, you guys know. Does anybody get what really happened? I'd like to say I was kind of aware of this a long time ago, but I'm not really sure. It's an interesting question. Sometimes you just turn on some music and write some code, you know? I think that's what people do. If you look at yeah, if you look at code, and I mean, what is this? How did this come into being? Do you see what this GIF is? Do we actually believe that this really happened? Or is this just kind of like a joke that someone's claiming? I don't know. I'm gonna try starting up some code. I'm gonna just take a look at what the code does when it runs. You know, what's real and what's not.
The spirits are restless.
This guy says the spirits are restless. That's what he says. I got the arrow keys here. Control M doesn't seem to turn off the music.
Yes.
That's pretty unfortunate.
Loknarosh.
Loknarosh is right. This does seem to actually be throwing lightning, I guess. So, you know, there's that. I mean, you look at this Murloc, its shadow is halfway in the air. Right? And we know why that is. Right? That's the interesting thing about computers. They're incredibly digital. They're an approximation that we're going to repeat the same thing over and over and assume that it is how it is. That a 1 is a 1, is a 0 is a 0. And so if you see something the computer's doing, fundamentally you can trace that down why that happened, right? And this is the same. When we load a unit, oh, I thought it was new render unit. What is this thing? It's in a different file. When we load a unit, a part of the loading of that unit is to actually create a shadow. And to do that, we make a unit shadow splat, and it has a height. And originally, these height values were very different than what they are now. I raised it into the air 30 units to cover up a mistake because of how fake my project really is at this point in time. There's just a lot of work to do, and I have every intention of eventually doing that work, but I didn't do it yet at all. If we lower these back to the ground and we put like a 3 or 5 or whatever this originally was here, and it's the same with unit selection, right? There's probably a 50 somewhere. Maybe it's not 50, maybe it's 35, I don't know. Or is it 10? But somewhere there's a function called select unit. And in that code, it calls do select unit. And in that code, yeah, it adds a height, you know, z plus 35. And I think this was actually just originally 5. I think it was originally 3 and 5. And where did those numbers come from? I don't even know if those are accurate numbers. I actually copied them off of Rivsoft, if you ever seen that guy's work. Music interruptivity is annoying, so I'm just gonna disable this music code right here. And we'll just kind of have continued, you know, the music as it is for me, it is for you. But the point I was trying to make
Lokrigar no Dabu.
You know, in just a few seconds, I can fix the height of the selection circle and the shadows so that they're not in the air. Right? I can do anything. And I think I still don't believe it, to be honest with you. I'm pretty sure that I probably still don't believe it.
None will survive.
Likewise, we could probably make this thing even better, you know? You could just go in here and get what is the projectile launch height and the projectile landing height.
Let's get on with
And this
it.
wouldn't be very difficult, right? But I think that's why, this is what I set out to prove, right? Is that humans invented Warcraft 3. A couple of guys in an office, they sat down and they said, you know, I think I have a proposition. It would be fun to have a little war chief and be able to just tell him to run around. It'd be like Warcraft 2, but in 3D. And they had this idea, and it was a pretty good idea, right? It really was. You could agree. It was a pretty good idea. And this thing is just a farm, to be honest with you. I mean, this thing's so broken, right? Like, if I tell this Murloc to attack at all, I didn't code melee attacks, right? It's just a projectile simulator. There's a huge amount of work to be done.
The spirits are restless.
I didn't code heroes. He has 2 to 8 damage, you know? Nothing's done. And that's okay, right?
Yes.
Because you can fix any of it. You can fix any of it, and you can fix it really easily. Very, very easily.
None will survive.
Right? You could really conceive
None will survive.
And you could fix any of it. And I think with that, sometimes I start to wonder, you know, what would happen if I made a code counter to just tell me how far have I already come? What really happened here? You know? We should be able to do that, right? We can make a function count file that maybe it even returns a number, returns the amount of code in that particular file or files, right? So it's a pretty straightforward idea. If the file is a directory, then we're gonna count up everything inside of it, right? So then you have a sum, starts at 0, and for every sub-file in all the files in that file, we're gonna count the sub-file, and we're gonna add that count to the sum. Otherwise, we just want to get the number of lines in the file, and for that you can do files read all lines from the file, right? And then you can actually just do dot size on that, and you can actually just return that as the number of lines. And this is a pretty straightforward definition of something that counts the number of lines in the file. Of course, if the file doesn't have lines, you can just return 0. And I think in the case of this one, you can return the sum, right? The only case where this wouldn't really work, or you don't want to do this, I guess, is you don't want to count things that aren't code files. So if you want to be really smart, you should say if file name ends with .java, because it's a Java program, and this would count the number of lines of Java code in the whole thing, right? And so this, I should be able to count source, the source folder of the source code, right? I guess maybe I need to tell this it's a file, but that's pretty straightforward. And this would be the source lines, and you can pretty instantly, you know, ask the computer the source line. So I bet nobody can probably see this because I wasn't zoomed in. I forgot to do that. But all I was doing is just writing a program that just says count file, and if the file's a directory, we get the sum of all the counting of all the files within it. Otherwise, if it's a Java file, then we add the number of lines of it, and if it's not a Java file, we add 0 lines. And this gives us the ability to say how many lines of code are in Warsmash, right? It's really simple, it's straightforward. And you can execute it, and it finishes almost instantly to tell me that I wrote 35,000 lines of code to really build Warsmash. The only place where that isn't quite true would be actually the fact that if you look at Warsmash, there is some code I didn't write in this MPQ section. So we can get even more specific with that. If we do source/com, it'll probably rule out all the MPQ code. And you can see it's actually 32,000 lines of code to build this game. And you know, I mean, it's not like I started yesterday. It's not like I started in January when Reforged was announced, right? I really think it's an interesting world, and I'm still not sure that I really believe that this happened. Sometimes I think maybe it's a dream, and I'm just going to wake up from that dream. Somebody's going to say, oh yeah, you didn't actually code all that. And then I'll have to code it again. But that's the fun part about writing computer code, you know, is you can just write code and write it again, write it again, write it again, right? Why not? You know, you need a pair of sunglasses to write your code, you put on a pair of sunglasses. If you need a pair of sunglasses to write more code, you just put on another pair of sunglasses. You know, I mean, things can get in your way, so you can't see. You try to stop you from writing code. You can still write code. You know, you just make a choice. You're like, I'm going to write computer code. It's a fun thing about computers, really. You can tell them what to do.